What's up, YouTube? My name's Andrew. Let's talk about what I learned this week. So, I had a few different focuses for the week. Number one priority right now is staying in alignment. So, this is kind of an all encompassing life objective, staying in alignment with my goals, my values, my routines, and things like that. So, that is kind of an always on type of focus. Every single day, every single week, trying to stay in alignment as much as possible and staying in tune with where I'm trying to go. Other focuses for the week. One, 28 Club, one of my ecom partners, a brand that I work with. They have a drop coming up not tomorrow, today's Saturday, but the next Sunday. So that means ads launch tomorrow to kind of create an on-ramp for that. And so this week was a lot of prep for that, making sure things were squared away. Another focus was July prep for clients and partners, making sure that any planning docs went out, things like that. And then I also have some renewals that I have to work on in July, so thinking about that. And then the other one for the week is laying out the next few weeks for my own brands and businesses. It's a very busy period, so got to make sure we're all squared away. So I'm going to kind of walk through each day really and talk about a bit of what it involved, but also primarily what I learned from it. I watched a video this week that really changed how I view and how I want to approach content, which I'll talk about toward the end, but that's kind of where this came from. So it's really a recap, not only for you to learn from what I learned and to allow me to provide value, but also to kind of let me cap off my week in a really nice way. All right, starting out Monday and Tuesday, I grouped them together because I didn't have a whole lot going on as far as meetings and actual events, but I also felt similarly both days, so felt appropriate to just combine them. But the overall vibe was honestly frustration. I put a lot of pressure on myself to come into the week really strong, which is honestly kind of silly because I don't even take weekends off. So it's not like there's a change from Sunday to Monday, but I always just want to hit the ground running and, set myself up for success during the week. But I felt frustrated because there was so much that I was waiting on. I had a list that I wrote down, and it was nearly a full page of just different things I was waiting on, all these balls that were not in my court and I couldn't do anything about. And what I learned in those couple of days is that waiting on something, actively waiting, takes capacity. And stressing about something takes capacity. So your capacity being I view it as a battery. You can view it as, a pie or whatever, but it's I have a battery and it has a limited amount of energy that I have to provide. And so kind of subconsciously, this active waiting where I'm sitting, I'm checking my email, I'm thinking about it, is taking up some of that capacity. And then whenever I turn to other stuff that I can actually work on, I feel like I have nothing to give. And it's because of that long list of stuff that I was so focused on. So really the focus was resetting, letting go of those things, releasing kind of my grip on them, and putting my energy into things that I can control. It took a lot of intention and really mindfulness to step back, because as an entrepreneur, sometimes it's really frustrating when you're ready to move forward but no one else is. And that's what I kept facing is there are timelines that I want to be able to stick to, and if other people can't keep up their end, then it's going to impact me and my timeline. So it's really hard to kind of take a step back and say I can't control it, it's fine, and not breathe down people's necks. So it took a minute, but I pulled my energy out of the things where the ball's not in my court, and I really made it a point to focus on the task at hand. This shift in Monday and Tuesday, obviously it happened later on Tuesday because I had 2 days of kind of a weird vibe, but this shift and this little block of time that normally I would say I wasn't productive enough, I didn't like how those days went, they ended up being so valuable for the remainder of the week. So Wednesday, I had a couple of calls. First call was a marketing call with the 28 team, aligning on the drop and what I needed from them, what they needed from me, making sure we're all squared away. Because like I said, ads start up tomorrow, which means the latter half of this past week was me building out creatives, announcement email, things like that. So we had to make sure that we were aligned on all the creative, all the strategy, budgets, things like that. So we had a really good call. And then I also had an alignment call with Jillian, who is actually on our team. She started as an intern, I think January of this year, and is still with us and is doing some work on our own brands, but also helping us with client stuff. So we have a fantastic relationship. She's brilliant. So I had a call with her just to catch up, make sure we're good to go on everything. And that call was really important to me because I realized that there were areas where I was lacking in communication. Again, being a founder, being an entrepreneur, it's so easy to keep things close to you and not communicate everything that's happening and keep people in the loop. And I realized that I wasn't communicating enough with her. So we talked about that, found alignment on it. The learning from Wednesday really was that the people you are working with are often more important than the idea itself. So this message was learned in a very real sense, in my life. But I also noticed, kind of as I was realizing that that it was a learning I was experiencing, it had come at me in different directions in media that I had consumed. So I thought that was very interesting, and to me that means that it's extra important. Like if the universe or whatever is trying to tell me this multiple times, then it's something I need to pay attention to. So I think the first time something like it came up was I was watching. I always watch podcasts, but I was watching the Sorry We're Cyrus podcast where Tish and Brandy Cyrus had Miley on. Miley always drops some really good wisdom on podcasts, so I love listening. And she talked about the attention that she pays to the people who are working on her stuff, working in her projects, the people in her circles, because their energy that they're putting in matters so much. She even went to say she doesn't want people with bad energy cooking her food because she's then consuming it. But it came at me in that podcast. But then I was also watching the newest episode of Amy Poehler's podcast, Good Hang, and as I'm talking about it, I'm trying to remember who was on it. I'll remember. She was in Russian Doll. I can't remember her. I'll put her name here. But I love her. She's also brilliant, even though I can't remember her name right now. But they talked about the same thing, and that statement actually came from something Amy said, where she said the people you're working with are more important than the idea itself. Might have said it in different words, but so I had heard kind of the same sort of idea a couple of times, and then I faced it head on in my life. Not as a challenge, but just as a realization where, being on these calls with people and being able to kind of tap into the energy that they're putting into something and see, people coming together to create something and to build, it's really beautiful. And it's also really important. Early stage business, the team you're building is far more important than the concept most of the time. I think a good example of team building as well is Minted New York. I was thinking about it yesterday, where they put out a new video for their gel drops, and not gel drops, but the drop for gels. And the video was incredible, and I thought about how Marcus found Sam Snowden and started working with him years ago, and how Marcus has been able to put together this creative team. And I'm sure him and Sean have had to learn some of the creative elements too, but now they're able to produce these pieces that are just next level. It's a similar thing with like 28, where, which coincidentally they're a similar industry, but like that's an industry where there can sometimes be a lack of creative, like a lack of innovation in a sense. So seeing people put together teams to like really do something different and do something impressive is something I love, and it's something that I think about with my own businesses, is the team that I'm building. Thursday was also a big day, in the sense of learning and in the sense of, I don't know, kind of having different epiphanies and things like that. Part of the reason why I wanted to do these recaps and start doing it is because I have a lot of things that I think about on a weekly basis. I don't want a podcast, but I want a way to share them, a way to share not only the business side of things, but also like the personal growth and, tapping into some spiritual aspects. So I think that this was a very important learning for me, and I don't know, I'm excited to share it. So I had therapy on Thursday, and my therapist and I have a great relationship. Been working with him for like 5 years. So he has seen me through a lot of different phases of life, and now he gets to see me in my best chapter of life so far. And so it's a very rewarding relationship too, I think, for both of us. But the topic that I brought to him on Thursday was that I struggle because I have a desperate need to help people, particularly people who I can see have a lot of skill, natural ability, potential, and they're kind of boxed in either by themselves, by their employer, by both, anything like that. Maybe just by their like internal monologue and their self-limiting talk and things like that. But when I see people in these situations, I really feel a deep desire to help them pull out of it. Like, I want to help people find self-actualization. And it can be really hard because, and I think that this is a pretty universal experience, is when someone asks you for advice and you give it and they're like, okay, whatever, and then they don't listen. Now, that's hard to deal with and it can be really annoying, but it's also a situation of like timing, where sometimes you need to plant the seed and then they'll get there. Sometimes they'll never listen. People have to be in the right mental state and they have to be ready and willing. So I was struggling with it because in my own life, I have been in these spots. I've been at rock bottom. I've been completely broke. I mean, I've gone through 2 layoffs in the past like 5 years or so, maybe 6 years now. 2 layoffs. I've been broke. I've been completely lost in what I want to do plenty of times. I've been in really rough places mentally, and I know what it takes to get out of it. Not saying it's a one-size-fits-all sort of situation, but I know how you can get out. And it's really difficult to see people getting in their own way, because I also know what that feels like, where I was talking myself out of growth and talking myself out of getting better. So it's really difficult for me to be like, I compared it to, there's some sort of like story or saying where it's like, you're facing someone and you're trying to get them to turn around to see the view behind them, and like you just can't get them to turn. And I talked to my girlfriend about that, and she was like, all you can do is tell them what's behind them, and then you have to let it go, which is something I'm trying to adopt. But my therapist, he like absorbs books and words and teachings and anything. And we talk a lot about Buddhism, honestly, and Buddhist teachings. But he brought up the book. It's a series of journals, really, from Thich Nhat Hanh, Fragrant Palm Leaves, written 1962 to 1966. And I believe he said that this was when Thich Nhat Hanh was kicked out of Vietnam for like being against the war and things like that. But what happened was he was in New York, and he, obviously, meditation, big thing. he reached a new level of meditation. And he was struggling with the fact that he reached it and he knew his friends couldn't reach it too. So I'm going to read this bit of a piece from this book because it really resonated with me. He said, "I cannot force myself back into the shell I've just broken out of. This is a source of great loneliness for me. Perhaps I could persuade my dearest friends to accompany me on my voyage through space, but it may be dizzying for them, and it might even incite feelings of hatred or resentment. Would they force me to return to Earth, back to the illusory plane of old hopes, desires, and values, all in the name of friendship? What good would that be for any of us? That is why I want to burn down the huts where my friends dwell. I want to incite chaos to help them break through the shells that confine them. I want to smash the chains that bind them and topple the gods that restrain them. For us to grow, petty amusements or even sorrows must not dominate us. A free person neither adheres to nor violates life's rules. The most glorious moment in life is to witness a friend's return, not exactly a return, but an infinitely exquisite moment when he emerges from the chaos caused by the annihilation of his last refuge. There he is, liberated from the hard shells of 1,000 lifetimes, standing nobly in the brilliant light cast by his burning refuge. In that moment, he will lose everything, but in the same moment, he possesses everything." And he read this to me and then was like, I don't really know if that helps, but it was very affirming in a sense, because I think that for those on a path of personal growth, a lifelong path, sometimes you get to a point where there is an element of loneliness, where you have grown to this extent to where you look at the people who haven't maybe gotten there, haven't felt that, whether it's enlightenment or whatever, and you want to look at them and be like, come with me. Like, it's so much better over here. If you could just see, if you could just understand, it's so much better. It doesn't have to be like that. It can feel really lonely and it can feel really frustrating. I think he expresses that well with him saying, like, I want to burn down the huts where my friends dwell. I want to incite chaos to help them break through the shells that confine them. That's it. So I don't think that this, excerpt from this book necessarily explained to me what to do and what to change, but it did help me understand that, in a way, how I feel is just a part of that journey. It's a part of the dance of it. So I'll put the name of that book here too, so that you can look at it if you want to. But I thought that piece was really, really impactful. All right, getting into Friday, I had a very nice chat with my friend George over at Volt. Again, another ecom partner. I work with him as a growth partner for his brand. And this was, again, just kind of the reminder of the importance of working with quality people, specifically people that see your value and recognize it and appreciate it. I think I am very, very lucky to say that everyone that I work with right now is very humble and appreciative of the work that I put in, and they typically match or try their best to match what I'm putting in. So that was really good. And then the other thing on Friday, a bit of a learning as well, was I was at the gym. I think it was back and biceps or something, but I was at the gym and I was thinking about how different my lift felt from the day prior. And it got me thinking about energy, specifically active versus passive action in an energetic form. So passive action would be like going through the motions. Your head's somewhere else, but you're doing it. On paper, you're doing the same thing, right? But it's like if I go lift and I'm thinking about what I want to have for lunch or work things or how badly I want to not be there. I'm just going through the motions. I'm checking off the box, but I'm not present. So then clearly active action is the opposite. It's about presence. It's about being in the moment. So with the example of, lifting, it is thinking about the motion, thinking about form, pushing yourself, being in each and every movement, thinking about your breath. Really lifting, and most forms of exercise can be a form of meditation. So active action is just being very, very present in what you're doing, being all in every moment. But I was thinking about that and how much it impacts outcome, because on paper you could do the same routine for 4 months, but if you compare doing it for 4 months with active action versus passive, you're going to see wildly different results, because with active is when you find flow, that's when you push yourself, that's when you improve. So thought about that. But overall, thoughts on this week. This is a period of very deep work in life for me. There were quite a few late nights this week. My eye has been twitching pretty constantly. But I've been trying to balance that and do well at keeping my physical and mental health in check while getting the work done. They're just, we go through these phases in life where sometimes it's more relaxed, it's more laid back, and then other times life demands more of you. And right now life is demanding quite a bit of me, but I enjoy it. So that's where, that's just where we are in life. I guess context on business, if you're still listening. I have Low Tide, which is a digital business. We, do a lot of paid media. We do app store optimization. We do reporting and things like that. Building out a vertical for that called Lab, which is ecom focused. So particularly a founder to founder ecom focus. So that's what I'm doing with guys like 28 Volt, among others. So we have those, and then this, hopefully in July, this coming month, we're launching 2 new ecom brands of our own that we've been working on for quite a while. We've done ecom before, but this is our first real push into it. So there's a lot going on. We have a lot of travel coming up. But, I put in my journal yesterday that the only way to put in the work that is required is to take care of everything else. So if you don't take care of your body, it won't hold up. If you don't take care of your mind, it won't hold up. So while the focus typically is what I can do on my computer, the work that's being done in person and oftentimes alone is really the key to that success. So thank you if you've listened. Thank you if you've watched. I'm probably going to start doing this every week because it's good for me, and hopefully it's good for you as well. The last thing, very last thing, is I promised to explain the video that I watched that changed how I view content. And I'll put his name here. This guy, he works in content. I found him on TikTok, but he's also on other platforms. But he talked about building in public and how he doesn't like it. Not that he doesn't like it, but how you should actually do it. And effectively said, you have to have some form of proof. You trust yourself, but you have to have proof for your audience, because really people need value, right? Now, I've created plenty of success for myself, but there are certain markers that I want to meet before I am more public about it, right? And before people truly care. But what he said was curate in public. And with that specifically, he said, share your learnings and what you're doing. So that's what I'm doing here. And then he said, build in private. I don't know that I'll fully build in private, because if I'm doing these, it's going to include some information on what I'm doing, behind the scenes to build things out. I do like people to be able to see the journey if they want to, but it just made me think about my approach to YouTube and how I keep trying to find a good stride with it. But one of the things I always limit myself on is how much I can talk. I like to talk. This is where I feel most me, is when I can just sit and explain things and talk, and I get caught up on like editing and B-roll and all of these things. So that, with like the learnings, made me realize like this is what I'd prefer to do. Cannot promise that I'll keep it up forever, but if you like it, if you've watched this long and you enjoyed it and you got something out of it, let me know, because that'll be some encouragement to show up again next week.